Birth in Hell. The tactical paradox of 1915. Imagine it. The year 1915. The Western Front. From the English Channel to Switzerland stretches not a line, but a giant, festering wound on the body of Europe. This is not a war of maneuvers, not a war of heroic cavalry charges. This is a war of mud, steel, and hopelessness. This is positional slaughter. Soldiers have burrowed into the ground like moles, several meters deep. Between the enemy trenches lies no man's land, pockmarked with shell craters, barbed wire, and corpses that no one can retrieve. The air is thick with the smell of cordite, decay, and fear. And it is in this hell that a tactical paradox is born, one that will give rise to our hero. On one hand, defense. German machine gun nests with their Maxims and later MG08/15 turned any offensive into a meat grinder. The density of fire was monstrous. To break through the front, these points had to be suppressed. But how? Heavy tripod-mounted machine guns like the French Hotchkiss or Saint-Étienne weighed around 60 to 80 pounds with their mount. They were excellent for defending one's own trench, but utterly useless for an attack. They couldn't be quickly dragged across mounds of earth, craters, under a hail of fire. The armies desperately needed a new weapon, a weapon for the attack, a weapon that one man or a crew of 2 or 3 could carry, a weapon that could deliver a short, powerful burst at the moment of dashing from one shell hole to another to clear an enemy trench. The French called this concept beautifully and terrifyingly feu de marque, marching fire, fire on the move. The dream of an infantryman who no longer wanted to be a defenseless target in a field. And this dream materialized in the person of Colonel Louis Chauchat and his co-authors, Suter and Ribeyrolles. They created something revolutionary. In theory, the Fuselmetrier modally 1915 CSRG, from the first letters of the creator's surnames and the Gladiator factory. This was a light automatic rifle. Look at the numbers from your table, which I will mentally translate into images. Only about 20 pounds. Almost 3 times lighter than its German counterpart. It had a pistol grip, bipod, a long but not extreme barrel. It fired the standard French 8x50mm or Lebel rifle cartridge. The idea was brilliant. Every infantry squad would get its own mobile fire support. Not one heavy machine gun per battalion, but several light machine guns in every attack. This was supposed to turn the tide of the war. And you know what? In theory, it should have. The idea truly was ahead of its time. Look at post-war developments. The German MG34, the Czech ZB-26, the Soviet DP-27, the American Bar. All of them are children of this very concept of marching fire. The Chauchat was the first mass-produced light machine gun in the world adopted by a major army. This is its historical merit, which cannot be taken away. The production numbers speak for themselves. Nearly 800,000 units. This is a colossal figure. It was supplied to allies, Belgium, Russia, Greece. And in 1917, the United States, like a lifeline, pounced on it as its army rapidly deployed in Europe and was in acute need of automatic weapons. It would seem, here it is the breakthrough. Here is the weapon of victory. Oh no, instead of glory, the Chauchat earned hatred, contempt, and the nickname the worst machine gun of all time. Why? Well, here we move from brilliant staff ideas to harsh reality. The reality of total war. The curse of compromise. How economics killed hopes. War is not only tactics and strategy. First and foremost, it is economics. It is resources, metal, machine tools, skilled labor, time. By 1915, France, one of the most industrially developed countries in the world, was on the verge of exhaustion. The best factories were working to produce artillery, shells, rifles. There were no specialized arms manufacturing plants for a new, complex product. And here a fateful decision was made, one that predetermined the Chauchat's fate. Its production was placed at the factories of the Gladiator and Sidarm companies. And what do these factories do in peacetime, you ask? They manufacture bicycles and baby carriages. Yes, you heard right. The very machine gun on which a soldier's life in the hell of the trenches depended was made on the same assembly lines as tricycles for Parisian children. Imagine the level of workmanship. Parts were not polished with micron precision as at arms manufactories. They were stamped, roughly machined, and then soldiers in workshops at the front had to finish them with files just to get something to work. The quality of the metal was terrible. The thin walls of the receiver, which had to withstand the pressure of powder gases and the bolt's impacts, would heat up and deform under intense firing. This immediately led to jams. Now let's break down the most notorious ailments of the Chauchat, one by one. 1. The magazine. That notorious semicircular, open-topped magazine holding 20 rounds. Its design is not a whim, but a forced evil. The French 8x50mm unreliable cartridge had a pronounced rim. Such cartridges could not be neatly stacked in a straight box magazine. They would catch on each other. Hence, the semicircle. But this openness became a death trap. Mud, sand, snow, rain constantly flew into the trench. All of this instantly got right into the magazine, onto the cartridges. And the feeding system was complex with a staggered feed. The slightest speck of dirt, and a cartridge would tilt. Jump. At the most critical moment of battle, soldiers tried wrapping magazines in rags, but it helped little. 2. Long barrel recoil. The Chauchat's unique and, in general, clever blowback operation worked on the principle of long barrel recoil. Simply put, when fired, the barrel recoiled backward almost the entire length of the cartridge, and then, returning forward, chambered a new round. This provided a low rate of fire, only 240 to 300 rounds per minute, which theoretically saved ammunition. But in practice, it meant that with each shot, the weapon's center of gravity jerked wildly back and forth. Imagine, you're aiming, you pull the trigger, and your weapon doesn't just vibrate slightly from recoil, it literally dives in your hands. What kind of accuracy, especially in automatic fire, could there be? It was area fire and nothing more. 3. The non-replaceable barrel. A modern machine gun is essentially a modular system. Barrel overheated? Pull out the hot one, insert a cold one, and you're back in action. The Chauchat's barrel was fixed. Under active fire, it would glow red hot. The steel would lose its properties, accuracy would drop to zero, and a cook-off, a runaway discharge, could occur. The weapon simply had to be allowed to cool. A luxury, you understand, was not permitted in battle. 4. Sensitivity to ammunition. The quality of cartridges under conditions of mass production and economizing also suffered. Variations in powder charge weight, different case dimensions, and the Chauchat's finicky mechanism, already assembled with large tolerances, would refuse to work. It was like a princess on a pea, assembled from bicycle parts. And this masterpiece ended up in a soldier's hands. The French poilu, the bearded one, who had already seen it all for 2 years, who was philosophically resigned to fate. He cursed, he spat, but he endured. The Chauchat was something. Better this nightmare than nothing at all. But the real tragedy and the wave of universal hatred came when the Chauchat was introduced to a new force on the Western Front, the American doughboys. The American nightmare. Can't shoot, really garbage. The American Expeditionary Force under General Pershing arrived in Europe with enthusiasm, but with a catastrophic shortage of modern weapons. They had only a tiny number of their own Browning automatic rifles, bar. And then the generous French allies offered. Take our Chauchats. There are many of them. They are battle-tested. And they even offered a version chambered for the American .30-06 cartridge. This was a fatal mistake. Converting it for a different cartridge upset the already precarious balance of the system. Of the approximately 19,000 such machine guns, many had improperly balanced bolts. What did this mean in practice? Runaway, automatic fire. A soldier would press the trigger, expecting to fire a short burst, but the machine gun would empty the entire magazine in a couple of seconds in a wild, uncontrollable frenzy. Imagine the horror. You're in an attack, trying to hit a target, and the weapon in your hands has a mind of its own, wasting precious ammunition into thin air. The Americans, practical and straightforward, did not stand on ceremony. They immediately came up with their own vulgar acronym for CSRG. Can't shoot, really garbage. Their reports are full of complaints. In the mud and cold rains of the Argonne forest in the autumn of 1918, Chauchats failed en masse. Soldiers simply threw them into shell holes and picked up captured German MG08/15S or lovingly wrested reliable British Lewis's from allies. The German machine gun, for all its weight, worked. It worked in any conditions. It was reliable as a hammer. And the Chauchat was like a finicky Swiss music box in a trench full of mud. And here we come to the most bitter political aspect of this story. General John Pershing knew about the Chauchat's problems. He knew he already had a ready-made, excellent solution, the Browning automatic rifle bar. But there was a paranoid fear. What if the bar fell into German hands and they copied it? And Pershing deliberately delayed the mass introduction of the bar into the troops, insisting on using the French surrogate. This decision made in the quiet of an office cost the lives of hundreds, if not thousands, of American boys who went into their first ever attack with a weapon they despised and did not trust. Here is the true price of bureaucracy and fear. Historical retrospective and an unexpected legacy. So, was the Chauchat utterly hopeless? No. And here's why. History is a fair lady. She puts everything in its place. First, as I already said, it was a pioneer. It proved the very viability of the light machine gun concept. The Germans, who captured Chauchats as trophies, designated them MG-156F and used them on secondary fronts and with second-line units. They saw the idea, and their brilliant engineering response, the universal machine gun MG-34 and later the MG-42, was in many ways an answer to that very demand for marching fire that the Chauchat first tried to meet. Second, look at the table. Compare it to what came before it. It is light. It is relatively simple, in theory. It is mobile. The next generation, the Soviet DP-27 Degtyaryov, adopted in 1927, was already ahead, more reliable, simpler, and more effective. But without the bitter experience of the Chauchat, perhaps even it would not have existed. Third, the Chauchat became a symbol of something greater. It became a symbol of weapons of desperation. When a country needs to arm millions, when there is no time, resources, or technology, it produces what it can. The price for this is quality and human lives. In this sense, the direct spiritual descendant of the Chauchat is the British Sten of the Second World War. Ugly, primitive, assembled from plumbing pipes, but cheap and necessary. Or the American Liberator pistol, a stamped, single-use weapon. This is not parade weaponry. This is survival gear in a total crisis. The unanswered question. So, was the Chauchat the worst machine gun of all time? For an American infantryman in the Argonne forest in 1918, absolutely yes. For a French poilu, who had no choice, it was just another burden of trench life, slightly more dangerous than the others. Its tragedy is not that it was poorly conceived. Its tragedy is that it was ahead of its time by about 5 years. It was a brilliant idea born in hell and embodied in metal by those who could not give this idea a worthy incarnation. It became a victim of the gap between tactical necessity and the industrial capabilities of a nation pushed to its limit. That's what I think about when I look at photos of this awkward, ugly machine gun. We so easily hand out labels: worst, best, failure, success. But behind every failure lies someone's life, someone's calculation, someone's desperation, and someone's hope. The Chauchat is a monument to human ingenuity under conditions of absolute nightmare. A monument to how a good idea can be trampled by the harsh reality of war. And a monument to the boys who had to go into battle with that reality. What do you think? Do you agree that the worst label is fair? Or perhaps history has been too harsh on the Chauchat? What other weapon, in your opinion, could compete with it for this sad title? Write in the comments. Let's discuss. Dialogue is what makes history come alive. And if this deep, emotional analysis gripped you, made you think, support the channel, subscribe, like, share this video with like-minded friends. We have many more difficult but important conversations ahead about history, technology, and people. Stay on the channel. This was not easy, but it was honest. Thank you for staying with me until the end.